In 1957, historian, Nobel laureate, and world champion curler Ekton Spritzel made a most fascinating discovery. Locked inside a small, antique chest found hidden under a turn-of-the-century dwelling in Whitechapel were a series of journals penned by Joe Merrick, the legendary Elephant Man. Within these long-lost tomes, a startling tale unfolded. A story the British police force, government, and even the monarchy attempted to hide under concrete, as you would a dead hitchhiker. Ekton passed suddenly and quite unexpectedly whilst taking part in a horseboxing match. But his legacy lives on in the program you are about to hear. Elephants Eye, the untold tales of Joe Merrick. Adapted for the wireless and narrated by me, Horatio Fife. Part 1. The rain fell in frigid sheets upon my burlap sack as I trudged through the narrow back streets to the sanctuary of my office. Upon seeing the familiar sign of the agency, I breathed, or rather squelched, a sigh of relief at the impending removal of the bulbous and deformed frame the law saw fit to curse me with, and the glacial chill of winter in this old town. Had I really owned and operated the Elephants Eye 4 years now? Not a long stretch, truth be told, though to me it felt an eon, and a world away from my previous life in the circus. The agency's proven track record in crime-solving was all thanks to my finely tuned observational skills, coupled with an uncanny ability to scare a confession from even the roughest of street thugs with merely a brightly lit torch shone upon my ghastly visage.
Good morning, Miss Vanderhelden. Did you have a most joyous weekend?
Oh, of course, Mr. Merrick. Went to see the girls at the Gaiety.
I've yet to attend a Gaiety Girls show. Master made mention of his attendance record exceeding 10, with no sign of his eagerness slowing.
Well, he is an awful latch at times, ain't he?
Well, he is but a man, Mrs. T. Did not the new Grundy take your fancy? Where is old Sid trying his writer's hand at comedies now, and much praise has been bestowed upon him.
Oh, right off, Grundy, ever since his play about those horrid savages in the New World. The New World savages done killed my brother in wedlock. To blazes with them.
Rather a shame. It was quite a touching story. Did you have dinner at the theatre or another venue?
Oh, we had some rather lovely slop at Malcolm's.
Oh, I do so adore that locale. Though it may be dank and filled with pestilence, it does feel like home. What delightful being served this week. They do a knockout bucket of slightly rotten potatoes.
I had somewhat similar to beef, but that's not what it actually is. Mr. T had as usual. £1/2 of tramp's marrow.
Splendid. Keeps a man in prime health to suck the marrow of the less fortunate.
All thanks to his diet, he's outlived his whole family, he has. Ripe old age of 36.
Why, he doesn't look a day shy of 29. Now, to business. Any interesting poster riders, Mom?
Oh, there's very little this morning, I'm afraid. A restraining order against Marston, filed by the Gaiety Girls, and our assistants investigating them Ripper murders has been requested by this anonymous letter. They had another victim turn up this morning. Medical precision cutting round the neck and face. Gutted like t'others before her.
I was wondering when someone would approach us for help in these dire circumstances.
I shuffled to the window and gazed contemplatively as the droplets slid across the panes, mingling with one another before plunging from the sill's edge to the cobblestones that lined the alley beneath. This would be quite the case, possibly the most arduous we've ever attempted. leather apron, the Whitechapel murderer. Some claim he's an American doctor traveling across England, murdering for sport. Many believe him to be an emissary from God, brought forth to show us the price for our sins. There's even the notion that 'tisn't one single perpetrator, but a whole gang. Of course, I subscribe to the belief that all of these theories are bunk, and he's probably an unhinged politician tired of being cheated out of his ill-gotten gains on the street corner. As all these myriad thoughts danced a merry jig through my oversized cranium, the door swung wide and Marston stumbled in. Rampaging through the office before collapsing onto his desk, case files cascading through the air. Hello, Joe. Rough weekend?
Not at all.
Well, you look terrible.
How are you, Marston?
Yes, it was mighty good, Joey. Unearthed some rather fantastic clues for the Snooglebird case in Abney Park. And...
You haven't been grave robbing again, have you?
Shush you, it's a fine hobby. Anyway, and... might have found Mrs. Trumpley's husband floating face down in the Thames.
By Jove, did you try and secure the body?
Unfortunately not. Couldn't quite reach the old bastard to haul him out. Had to go because he just bobbed away towards Tower Bridge. Though I did manage to snatch the toupee from atop his noggin.
Well, at least they'll have something to bury now. It is such a shame. Mrs. Trumpley did so hope we'd be able to retrieve the whole corpse. The family loves a good funeral.
Oh yes, I remember the wake for poor old Grandad Trumpley. Still have the scars and that odd pain in my right leg when the weather turns. Quite worth the injuries, though, for the night that we had, you old dog, you.
Elephant, you mean? She was quite the feisty young thing. Supple and nubile, riddled with disease. Truly, she was perfect.
Shame she had to cough up her own ribcage during the early hours of the morning, though, wasn't it?
Thankfully, by then, we'd closed the deal.
What?
You know, landed the contract.
Still not getting it.
Intercourse.
Oh. I don't follow.
Quite slow today, aren't you, Marston?
Sorry, I had a bit of a late night on the opium. Early morning on the opium, too, now that I think about it.
To even the layman, it would appear you're quite the addict.
Station nonsense, I'm not a junkie. A mere devotee is what I am. I can give it up any time I want. I just don't feel like it this year. If it's good enough for Abilene, it's good enough for me.
Those were unsubstantiated rumours spread about town in the Telegraph after Levy Lawson ran afoul of the inspector due to his predilection for soot-covered choir boys.
You mean Baron Burnham if they're black, Levy Lawson? The most prolific racist to have edited a newspaper in our country's history?
The very same.
However did that golden nugget slip past my expertly honed observational talent?
Opium, perhaps?
Ah, yes, you may be right. Wouldn't life be an absolute rot if this stuff went out of fashion? We'd no doubt be forced to realign our gun sights on cocaine, or go back to mixing absinthe and laudanum.
Careful with your words, old man. Lily and the Green Fairy can ruin lives. Happened to my poor old uncle. Have I ever spun you that particular yarn?
Good golly, no. Sounds to be a right juicy tale, though. Proceed.
He ran from room to room begging for help, screaming in a blood-curdling tone that a great winged beast in the face of Pitt the Younger kept calling him a Pathic and a backgammon player, while attempting to mount him from the rear.
I say, those are some strong terms for a child to be uttering.
Sure words never have been spoken, old chap. We all thought her a joke, locked her in the scullery and thought naught of it until hours later we found him hunched over and quite dead. The old coot had bashed his skull into fragments with a frying pan. And the worst part is he necked all the ports before he did it, to dull the impending pain. Selfish bastard. You had the last hurrah, though. Ate very well at Christmas.
You cannibalized your uncle's corpse?
Indeed. We did think after all his years of boozing it would have ruined the meat, but it was rather terrific. He made a fantastic crackling.
Now, sirs, you must attend to business, otherwise no bucket of ill faces for you.
Damn you! I want them this very instant.
First, you both must visit the crime scene. Once you've done some actual work, then you can scoff yourself silly on them
Slimy jowls.
Fine. You know I could very easily thrash you upon the cobbles for such insubordination.
You couldn't even win a fight against limbless Lenny and Leytonstone, so you've no chance against the reigning East London bare-knuckle boxing and embroidery champion.
I held my own against Shirley.
Time and again we have to remind you that Mr. Holmes let you win. He'd asked Watson to place a substantial anonymous bet. The odds were so astronomically skewed, he'd be flush with cash for the rest of his days. That's how we raised the funds to buy 221B.
Thank you, Crone, for once again reminding me of my misfortune. I am feeling a tad peckish, though. Murder investigations do tend to increase my appetite.
We'll have to stop at Edgar's en route for a brunch roll, then. Chock full of the stuff he couldn't sell at breakfast, reheated, lowered in price, and lacking any sort of quality. Grease-based drinks are enjoyable, if a tad viscous.
Not forgetting they help lubricate the intestines for the inventional post-brunch roll evacuation.
For several weeks, a mad killer had thus far eluded all detection. One would assume this meant investigators were spending more time focusing on being feckless than partaking in any legitimate police work. All except the most unlikely of persons. Sort of a person, I think.
I must say how suspicious I am of Octavian.
Whatever aided you in drawing such a conclusion? The man's a horrific liberal.
During my visits to the Houses of Commons, when I received my award for thwarting Fawkes's gunpowder plot, using Wells's time machine, he was in possession of a most untrustworthy demeanour.
I do so wish you had waited a few days before coming forward with the evidence that incriminated old Fawkesy. His act of terrorism would have been well received, and we wouldn't have those oiks setting off bloody fireworks throughout November.
A little more silence during winter, or an award which allowed our agency to become the talk of London, and gave us enough steady work for you to indulge in those habits of yours. Not to mention it cemented a firm friendship with herbs. Which would you have chosen?
Quite right as always, Joe. We ate and drank aplenty on the reward from that case. Do you remember how his mustache sank when we discovered him hiding in that undercroft? Oh, how we laughed and laughed. In fact, we were still laughing when they hanged him in January. Now that I really think about it, did we have some kind of ailment or malady?
You were permanently high.
That explains it.
Something we haven't done in a number of weeks was attend the Sunday hanging. What say you when this case is over, we let our hair down, have a few jars and join in the fun?
You've a deal, sir. A few things more enjoyable than a good Sunday hanging. Maybe I'll finally live my dream of catching a head if it pops up and hurtles into the crowd. Turning a corner in the alley, we came face to trunk with a crowd of rabid journalists, scribbling frantically and bellowing questions in a frenzied fashion. At the epicenter of this fray stood a cadre of detectives, all gathered around the latest victim of Jack's fury.
Why is each victim being gutted?
And you think this is the work of the vile and reprehensible Ripper, sir?
Does anyone know where my bagel went?
What do you plan on doing with the corpse after the investigation? She's a looker.
I saw her first.
You got ill, weren't you, liar?
Here, we can take turns, you mugs. It's not as though she'll tire out. From behind the crowd, accentuated by the narrow space and an almost primal dirge, I called for quiet the only way I knew how.
Could you all please step aside and let the investigators do their jobs?
Unfortunately, allowing you to do your jobs would result in the incompletion of our own.
You can't expect us, journalists, to let you, investigators, investigate things in peace. That's political correctness gone bloody starkers.
As you're trying to stifle the free speech of the press.
You fascist bastard! The public has a right to know.
Maybe so. I'm sure your wife would hate to discover the truth about where you acquired the pox.
Ooh, blackmail, is it?
Yes. How perceptive of you.
I elbowed my way through. No easy feat with such slapdash coordination.
Well, this is pleasant. Low lighting, fresh corpse, meddling journalists, and a drug addict. It's your wedding reception all over again.
And all of that before we've even cut the cake. How are you, Joe?
Barely alive, malformed in pain. The usual. What's the story, Evelyn?
Seems the Rip had a case of morning glory. According to early forensic tests, she's only been dead about half hour. That's why she's a fucking mess.
Now, no need for vulgarity. After all, I'm vulgar enough. Have you identified the deceased?
Yeah, Elizabeth Stride, a.k.a. Long Liz. She lived at 32 Flower and Dean Street.
And have any witnesses come forward yet?
We've only got one thus far, and she's a tad on the shaky side.
Why ever would the witness to a murder be frightened?
Just smoke your opium, Marston, and leave the real detective work to the professional.
Finally, something we can all agree on. Marston sat beside the corpse and began honking on his crack pipe yet again. I could tell his drug use was getting out of control, though his life path was always bound to be less than the straight and narrow. It's tough when you know your namesake was your father's favorite brewery. He looked down at the body and nudged it with his wingtip. Hey, you want some opium? He poked the rotting lady of the night again without realizing she'd expired. Not even the entrails spilling from her open belly made him twig. I asked you a question, Missy. I'll only ask it once more.
She's not going to answer you, Marston.
Oh, think she's better than me, eh? Maybe a bit of opium will sort her out, eh, what?
She's dead.
Is she?
It's the reason that we left the office.
Well, slap my chops and call me Penelope. We are outside. I reached down and slapped the pipe out of his tremorous hands before turning back to Evelyn.
Is there a description of the assailant?
Nothing as yet. With Hughes working with the witness now, we should have something within the hour.
Oh, Lord, why a pre-affiliate? Why not get Draper?
Draper's either in Rome or Paris. No one's quite sure. Hughes was still awake at this ungodly hour, so we dragged him in.
Fine. I want to know every scrap of information you get from this witness.
Why do you care so much about a few dead hookers, Joe?
Hookers are people too, Evelyn. Did you forget that?
You're still bitter about that, aren't you? You weren't to blame, Joe. You're one detective, for Christ's sake. You can't save them all. Don't forget that.
An elephant never forgets.
I'll send a carrier pigeon if we unearth any more information.
Much appreciated, Evelyn.
Hell of a case, Joe. One more thing. What are you going to do about Marston? He's a great detective, but his reliance on enhancements, it's not healthy for him or for you.
He's a great detective because of the enhancements.
Sooner or later, the monkey on his back is going to lash out at you, Joe. If you need a new partner, my daughter's looking for work. She's fresh out of the academy.
I'll take it into consideration.
I gave Marston a small kick, telling him to drag himself off the cobbles without words. Where are we going, Joe? Will there be booze?
We're going to Hilda's. See if we can secure some info of our own.
Hurrah! Make mine a pint of cocaine wine with a side order of pig eyes.
The Elephant's Eye, Part 1. Written, produced and arranged by Kurt Howard, with additional writing by Mark Hussard. Horatio Fife as the narrator, Reginald Harelik as Joe Merrick, Kenneth Burnjangle as Marston, Gertrude Patang as Mrs. Tranderhausen, Jeremiah Whoopsie-Doodle as Reporter 1, Barrington Stoat as Reporter 2, Sandy Cambridge as Reporter 3, Philip Nutherington as Reporter 4, and introducing Saucy Pete as Inspector Aberlin. An Elephantid Eye production.